You're the host. You're the radio man.
Oh my God, all the pressure on this inaugural edition of the Middle Ageless Men Podcast. So if you guys been following along, this has been a thing we wanted to do just because we were having or getting so much value out of just getting together, once every couple of weeks to talk about middle ageless men stuff. Obviously, this is still relevant to women as well and anybody that's a human. But guys, welcome back.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just us that are middle ageless men. It's not to say that's our audience is limited to that. Sorry, Brent.
Why don't you guys keep talking over each other?
What were you saying, Matt?
Well, his mic is crap, so I can just do that.
Yeah.
I'll assert dominance. Are you ready? Watch this.
Brent, I am your master.
How do you do that, dude? That's
I
awesome.
ran a program called Voice Mod.
Okay.
I'm researching a video. I want to do a video on why I don't think Jordan Peterson is a good presenter. And I want to, this may be something we could discuss, but I want to rewrite some of his speeches and use his voice. So I've got some software that allows me to do voice modulation. But so far, I'm only at the fun ones like,
I'm a banana. What a time to be alive, boys.
Oh my God, this is going well.
Over to you, Brent.
How are you, Matt?
I'm good, brother. Thank you. I'm good, man.
You weren't so good 2 seconds ago. You were blowing your nose, and Richard was talking about his sore ears, and I'm telling you how sick I am. So let's just be clear about this: middle ageless men. We're actually aging, and like we're all a little bit fluey and sick, and whatever that is happening at the same time. Man.
Well, mine's hay fever, so spring's finally rolling around. So
cool.
It's going to break 20 degrees or like 80 degrees Fahrenheit this weekend. So yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. So it's all just spring and feeling good, new beginnings. I've kind of adopted a no days off policy for me in terms of like physical exercise, working out, stuff like that. And it's showing. Like I'm in really good shape. I'm a big believer in this idea of like latent potential. I was telling a friend of mine, it was my daughter's 6th birthday, so we had 39 kids at the house and 30 adults. Dude, it was a fucking shit show. It was so much fun, dude. Like we had tug of war. We had jump, like what are those when you beanbag things? You jump in the bags and that kind of stuff. And I was basically playing tug of war with like 12 kids. By the way, 12 kids pulling on a rope is actually pretty darn impressive, I must say. Yeah, man, it's badass.
That moment of panic where you're like, I'll have to start pretending like I'm losing for the kids.
No, I didn't pretend. I put them in the dirt, bro. I put them in the dirt. Yeah. But yeah, man, otherwise all good. Business is ticking over. Playing a lot with systems, like different types of cold email systems and LinkedIn prospecting. Because basically, as you know, the way that you sell in the US is very different to South Africa. Whereas in South Africa, just pick up the phone and go, hey, my name's Matt. I'm the CEO of blah, and I want to sell you Y or solve this problem. And I'd always be able to generate lead flow just using the phone. And we didn't spend a cent on advertising, even when we were doing like $2 million a year. It was all just the phone. And then obviously here in America, nobody answers their phone. So unless they've filled out a lead form already, then they might engage with you. But if it's purely cold outreach, it's a very different growth system that you need. So we've been playing, and it's amazing to see how much technology now is coming with AI enabled features or use cases. So we use a cold email system called Instantly. And basically you set up sequences, you run your leads lists through those things. And then you've got something called Unibox. So you integrate Unibox with OpenAI through their API with the API key, and then you basically write macros. So if someone says, what are the benefits of becoming a best-selling author, or how much does it cost, or what exactly do you do, and you keep getting the same kind of responses. So you write the macros and then you activate the API key with GPT. GPT then reads all these inbox emails, which is it's a time thing to manage on your own. And then it basically learns through these macros what to say. And so the idea is that you can send, in theory, any number of cold emails, have a deluge of people responding back going, I'd like to, when can I meet you next week, as an example? And then it will basically manage the inbox for you without you having to spend the time to do it. So, it's just playing around with things like that. But I would say that we're certainly still in that trough of disillusionment, where you have this expectation that when you put 10, let's just say you do 10 things, you expect to 10 times return back. And so it's linear in terms of your expectation as a business owner. But actually you're falling into this trough of disillusionment where it actually takes much longer. You have to invest all the time in the systems, and like I'm a very big believer in the 1% rule, and just like looking at marketing automation systems and improving the copy and doing a better job at content and doing a better job at basically everything. So the idea is that when in any given day, all I'm focusing on is getting the 1% better, like across all areas. And then in theory, the idea is that eventually they compound over time so that you actually surpass what your original expectation was in terms of, how successful you'll be, or how much revenue you'll be generating, or how many customers you'll have. So, but it's, I'm in a very good headspace. How about you, Rich? What's going on?
Just go back from a trip to Singapore.
Rich, you've still got that thing on.
So, funny story. I was jumping on to coach a client, a speaking client earlier, and I had on previously a voice called the narrator. So if you imagine it was one of these, in a world where man can such and such, is really super deep voice. Anyway, because I only installed the software yesterday, so I'm halfway through the coaching call, and I wanted to show them the software. So I went to click over to it, and I was like, it's toggled on. And I said, hey, listen, I just want to confirm, have I sounded like me the whole time? And they were like, no, you sound a bit deeper than usual. I was like, oh my goodness. So that's the problem with the software, is you could arrive in a meeting with the CEO of a bank sounding like a banana.
Daffy Duck.
Anyway, so I've been traveling quite a bit. It's quite hard to settle down in a new country when you travel a lot. So I've been back in South Africa twice, once for a week, once for 2 weeks. I was in Singapore last week for a week. I was in Dublin. I'm here for a few weeks, and I'm going to Dublin again and back, and then going to Scotland. And it's making it a little bit difficult. So I'm struggling to feel completely settled. Although I'm very, very happy that when I arrive back here, I really do feel good. I feel at home. So I'm feeling a bit frazzled at the moment with regards to that. And I kind of wish if you move to a place, you almost want to give yourself 3 months. If you could move somewhere and then for 3 months not move, I think it's really good thing. I would especially say that what's not good is to keep on going back to where you left. Like maybe if I was here and then going to other new places, it would be different. But when you're here and then you go back to what you know, it becomes quite difficult to settle in the new place and to recalibrate yourself, who you are. And because I do think the where you are changes who you are a bit, which may be a topic that we can discuss. There's something about where you find yourself is who you become. And there's an identity connected to location. And so I'm struggling with that a little bit, which sounds very silly and stuff, but it feels quite real at the moment.
So I want to just go back to what Matt was saying about the AI. So a few things have happened in the last couple of weeks is that I've been using ChatGPT. I think everyone does all the time. And I'm doing a lot of these remote meetings. So I'm using Firefly's AI as my transcription service. And I've now found a GPT within ChatGPT that does summaries of the meetings. And it's interesting to me that the prompt, it obviously takes a long time to start figuring out what is the average prompt you want to summarize the meeting, to really pull out the stuff that you want from the meeting. But what actually occurred to me was that I've been doing this now 12 years. And for the first 2 years, and you're going to laugh at this, but I couldn't afford a new computer at that time, that would last, and I was doing it coffee shop to coffee shop. So I couldn't take the computer with me to coffee shop meetings. I just take a book. So I used to do these 2-hour meetings, and I used to write down all the notes. And through that process, over 2 years and a couple of meetings a day, just writing down notes, I started learning how to identify the key topics in the conversation and write down those notes. And that then translated into the way I should take notes sitting in a meeting when I eventually had the laptop. It wasn't just write down tons of stuff. It was figuring out which pieces I needed to highlight and then extrapolate if I sent notes to the client to make it richer and richer. And only in the last couple of days that I've been figuring out how to use the prompt better have I realized it's actually taken me 12 years to get to a point where I can use the GPT in a way that I don't think anyone else can. And it's remarkable to me because I've suddenly realized that my prompts now are quite substantial. I'm copying and pasting them and obviously tweaking certain things. He said, she said, first person, second, third person, whatever those things are. But it's also about figuring out the uniqueness of that conversation and then just tweaking certain things like highlighting this, don't speak about that, add more detail around this, put those numbers and ratios in. But it's like figuring that out. And what it's done is it's compressed my notes taking, but down to, I think I'm shaving at least an hour a day off my day at the moment. And that's only in the last couple of weeks I've realized how this works. And I'm genuinely shaving an hour. And so someone who sells blocks of hours over the next couple of years, that's a meaningful amount. And I think it's going to get better and better and better. And all I'm waiting for is a way to plug it into the meeting directly, as opposed to having to prompt it after the fact, that it auto-generates it to my standard. But I'm absolutely fascinated by the sort of, the 10,000 hour rule and how you can apply that to make the technology better and work for you. So just something that sort of stuck with me the last couple of days.
One of the things that I'm really excited about, have you seen that ChatGPT has memory now?
Memory.
So it used to not know who you were between chats. So every chat was a blank slate. So have you guys gone in and set up your personalization details in settings yet?
I've started.
Yeah, so I went in and I told it, my name is Richard Mulholland. I'm a professional speaker. I've written these 3 books. I've done this, I've done that. I set up how I want to be addressed, how I want it to chat to me, how I want to engage. I set up the level of detail, how I want them to act when it communicates back to me. So you can set up a whole bunch of prerequisites. Like you could say, if you were very liberal, you could say, please, I want you to have a skewed liberal view when you speak to me. And that's what it will do. And it will remember that, and will also remember across chats. So it will now remember previous and be able to access previous bits of data that you gave it and conversations you had. So, I can jump from one chat to the next chat to the next chat, and every single time have it engage with me with memory. I don't understand how this has not been much more spoken about, because it's one of the biggest game changers. Yeah, that it really is quite extraordinary.
Well, the one thing as well is that every single one of those prompts, it auto generates what it calls the summary. It decides what it calls, and it gives the feedback a name. I've become quite diligent in actually making sure that matches my meeting requests in my Google. So I can start referencing back, going, can you go back and look at meeting from Richard from this date, and I can find it and go from that transcript. Please include this information, and it is now starting to figure out that information. But again, I'm trying to set it up because I think what's going to happen is that I want to be able to go, I want this prompt and this kind of summary to be plugged directly into my Google Meets or Zoom, whatever it is, plug it in and remove me from that piece. Now,
Grain does that. Grain that I use.
Mm-hmm.
So I use grain.com, and one of the settings you can do in the recording is say, only show me clips of the other person. And it immediately generates a video that only has them answering you. And then what you do is then you can then take summaries of just that. You can get a transcript of just their voice and remove yourself completely.
But sure, but obviously what's important about our conversation, mine and my client, is that I'm volunteering information too. So it's also about, well, please put into my notes the things that I said about this, so I can put it into a summary and send it to the client. But the thing which is starting to really become very obvious to me is that there's a period here where we can abuse this for financial gain. But I do think, and I genuinely am starting to believe this, like for my own career here, that in the next couple of years, my job is absolutely critically under threat. Like I cannot see that it won't be. So I'm almost at this point where I'm going, I've got to sort of make money and really, really stretch this as much as I possibly can, because I do think that a lot of this, the stuff that I'm doing in the background and the learnings that I've got, I don't think you're going to need me in 5 years to answer a lot of the basic academic stuff. I really don't.
But I think it's not, because this is the thing with AI and stuff. So I had this sales meeting guy wanted to learn more around how we create books. And so he said, yeah, I've been playing around with GPT. I'm like, oh yeah. So I said, talk to me. How do you use it to create a chapter, for instance? So he said, well, I give it like 3 bullet points and then I say, write a 500-word chapter. So I said, okay. So basically you're opening yourself up to plagiarism. And I used the analogy of buying guns. So obviously in the US, Second Amendment, everybody can buy a gun. It's very easy to buy a gun. And like AI, just because you have access to buy a gun doesn't mean you know how to shoot it. And I think the thing with AI, especially now, it's not necessarily about, like, I don't actually agree, Brent, that it's going to threaten you at all. Because I think if you're able to repackage your value in the context of a custom AI that is Brent or Spilly.ai, and you're able to train that AI with your own knowledge base, like your own perspective. Like you take What the Freelance, your book, you upload that, and you just record videos. So what you're then able to do, and we did this with, I think I sent it to you, was Matt Brown AI, was to take all the transcripts from all the 800 plus interviews, all my books, all the thought leadership content, whatever, and then package it up as a custom AI called Matt Brown AI. So who has, the time to listen to 800 podcast episodes? I don't. But if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to get a piece of advice, not even advice, perspective from a real world experience that someone has, or a real world story that someone has shared, that's not an academic thing, you see, then you can repackage your value. I mean, fuck, dude, we're playing around, like my team are doing some awesome shit with AI generated video and stuff. Like one of them sent me, I don't know if I sent it to you guys, but it was like, I was like, fucking hell, this actually isn't me, but it is me. And it was, and it's still not perfect, but it will get there. You see what I'm saying? And so GPT and Claude and all these, popular AI platforms at the moment are like the talk, right? Because people just go to GPT because that's what they know. And so even with Rich and all of his presentation training and all that stuff, right? It's just, I believe that what it's going to do is open up a new way to commercialize your actual value. And it's more your experience in being a business coach or in being a podcast host or in being a presentation strategist or presentation company owner.
But can I'll give you, Matt, I don't want to cut you off here, but I tell you something that happened this week is that
he really does want to cut you off here.
He does. I can't really hear him though.
Yeah. You can hear his dog.
I can hear his dog. Yeah, unprofessional, bro.
So that dog can run free. Really. I was going to say what's saying else is that I sent out a this week notification to all my clients for my annual increase, and I always wait for like the pushback or the acceptances and stuff. And one of my clients gave me a little bit of pushback, and I was sort of expecting it. And I was like, no, you're getting the full increase. If you're unhappy with my value, we can chat about it. But what's interesting is that I went back to see when he engaged with me first. And this Friday will be 10 years since our first session. Now, I've kept notes every single month for 12 months for the last 10 years of his business's growth, which I've sent him, okay? But I also have my raw notes as well. And it's all sitting in Word. And I took that very first set of notes and I went, you're not getting it. You're not getting my increase. P.S. Happy 10th anniversary. And when you read where he was 10 years ago, it was like him and one staff, and this was his annual turnover, and where he is today, that snapshot is unbelievably valuable. But it's also the journey of a 2-man business to a 25-man business over 10 years, and all the bits of problem solving that he had to go through to get there on a month-to-month basis, meaningful problems, right? We didn't talk about the small stuff, it was the big stuff. But I'm going, that's one client. I've probably touched about 400 clients in the last 12 years. Now, if you take each one of those streams of going, here's a story of one business, right, doing this kind of thing, and layer that and figure out what those commonalities are, like the themes across all of that, I think there's something incredibly useful there at some point. I just haven't figured out what that product is yet. You're talking about like package it. Yeah. I don't know what that is yet. And I don't want it to be a book.
But the principle's there, right? It's you have this unique perspective on a particular story. And if you're able to repackage that and offer it on a subscription basis or on a whatever fucking basis, then you're able to, I actually think that you could probably make a significant portion of money of packaging that knowledge capital genuinely, and just giving it giving a new audience a way to access that at speed and with very low friction and with very low price points. And then you would probably find that you could save yourself like 40% of the time, right? You were talking about time saving in the beginning. So if you repackage that value, offer it up, replace 40% of your client or your revenue with this new value prop, and you save yourself 40% of the time. So I just don't believe that, AI is going to come along and make you relevant as a business coach. Like you just have to think differently about, well, how can I use this technology, right?
So one thing I'd like to say, even in the shorter term, from a coaching perspective, Brent, if I was a GPT, I would make people a lot better at giving shit talks. Because almost everybody comes to me and says, can you help me tell my story better? And if I was a GPT, that's what I would do. I would help them tell their story better. But of course, what my usual point of departure is, nobody gives a shit about your story. Let's find out what your point is, and then let's see how your story can be in service of your point. And we've got to dig way, way, way deeper. The problem with an intelligence is it will answer the question that it's asked. And, yes, given time. So somebody might say to you, how would I do this, or what would I do there? And maybe eventually it will learn for you to say, well, hold on a sec, why do you want to answer that? What do you want to do? The bottom line, though, is humans still do want human interaction. So there will be elements. And I think if you're an average coach, I think if you're an average at anything, you'll be put out of business. If you're an average illustrator, shit yourself. If you're an average writer, shit yourself. If you're an average coach, shit yourself. But if you're above average, you will be pushed beyond by the ceiling. The floor is going to raise, and you'll be standing on it. And I think that's what's exciting, is your current business model might be under threat, but you won't be.
No, agree.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Comfort.
Yeah.
I mean, you will be threatened if you don't do anything. Nobody can stay. Like,
sure.
But none of us have stayed. Look at who you were when I met you. You were a totally different human being. Matt was a different human being when we first met. Like, everything changes and we change with it. So the assumption is, will 2024 Brent still be relevant in 10 years? I think the answer is obviously no. But luckily, Brent's not in a fucking coma and is moving.
I feel like I'm in a coma at the moment, I've got to be honest, but otherwise I'm good.
Yeah, but it's hard to see the movement, right? It's like an iceberg. Like, we're an iceberg, and it's hard to see how we're moving. But it's like that client of yours. It's very, very hard for that client to see the value. But then the client stops and looks back at the whole journey, the 10 years, and realizes, holy shit, that's a lot of revenue and a lot of employees and a lot of life changes happened on this journey. And so I think that's what we'll look at, and it's exciting to see.
Okay, cool. Can we talk about your revisiting South Africa thing? I think that's really interesting, actually. It's in terms of being able to decouple yourself from your, the coffee shop and the traffic lights that you always knew. Like I'm curious to know how that feels like, to know that you come back to a place that's very comfortable, but you're not coming back. Like, just talk me through that a bit more detail.
So the first thing I realized when I arrived back, I can't remember if I've discussed this with you guys, when it's hard not to come back to a place and you immediately want to be cynical about the place because you want to affirm your decision to depart. So when you go back, like I went back and I was in Joburg and there was vagrants directing traffic. Now, I mean, it's easy to be angry about that or irritated about that generally, but I found myself getting really irritated about things and like, oh, well, it doesn't work this way. And then, of course, I had to remind myself, dude, you were really, really happy there for 40 years. Just be that guy again. And I had to. So the first thing I had to do, because you don't want to be a visitor. So the first thing I had to do is it's the same thing with my theory here. Everywhere I go, somebody's figured out how to be happy there. My job is simply to solve how they did it. And it's not that there's a place that's good and there's shit. Almost anywhere you go, if you go to Finland, they're the happiest people in the world, or Norway or whatever. Right? So like, what do they know? And you just got to figure out, you can't be who you were. You've got to become who they are and, act like the people who love it. So I went back to South Africa, and then that's the lens I take. So I go there and I think about who I was when I lived there. But then I become that person again. So instead of me being a person visiting South Africa, I become a person living in South Africa. And then when I come back to the Isle of Man, I become a person living in the Isle of Man. And I think that that's the right approach. I just think it's quite difficult while you're trying to create your new identity and your new sense of self.
Max, how many times have you been back, eh?
None. I've got zero interest, dude. None. Like not one fucking thing. And it's such a weird
miss me
thing.
Nothing,
hey? No, I miss you. I mean, I'd have a beer with you. You know what I mean? But I'm more actually interested to go visit Rich in the Isle of Man. Quite frankly, I've got my sister's out in Winchester, so very close with her. She's actually starting her own consulting firm out in the UK, which is pretty exciting. At the tender age of 59, dude. How's that? Yeah.
My motorcycle arrives on Friday, guys.
Oh, really? What'd you get?
No, my old one, my South African one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. My Tri-Street Triple. I'm very excited about that.
I'm more interested to go visit Rich in the UK, dude, and my sister than going back to South Africa. You know what I mean? Like, if someone says to me, in fact, on my daughter's birthday, one of the guys is a basketball coach. And so he knows a lot of the NBA players, like on the Denver Nuggets and whatever. And one of the players is from Nigeria. And so he has a foundation and he knows Tyler. So he invited Tyler to Nigeria to run a 2-week youth NBA sort of, coaching experience thing. So I said to him, well, listen, if you're going to fly all the way to Nigeria, you should go to South Africa. It's like 3-4 hour flights, whatever. And it's amazing. Like, I'll talk positively about it, in the sense of, I'll go back. The food's incredible. The wine's incredible, amazing weather, incredible beaches, beautiful people, just amazing. And you can 5-star everything and you won't even feel it. Like, that is an incredible, experience to go and have if you're flying, halfway across the world to run an NBA basketball coach. So when I talk positively about South Africa, I still feel as part of my identity that I'm always going to be, South African, and I'll always, be a big part of who I am and whatever. But from a going back there perspective, I have zero interest. I have none. I romance about, like, well, it could be in Franschhoek, having a nice bottle of white wine and an incredible meal with some good people. Like, I romance about that. But I think the nuance there is it's South Africa for me, given where I am now, to your point, Rich, about being here solidly for almost, 2 years, in fact, in July. So, geez, the time's just flown. It's just, and also the distance and the logistical stuff and the kids and the wife and the blah, blah, like that, it's a sad thing to say, but I don't think I'll actually go back there until, like, something happens. You know what I mean? Like, her parents are getting old. My dad's, like, getting older. And so, like, there's no pull to go back. It's not strong enough to pull me out of where I am to make me go there. If that makes sense.
Well, which obviously has, friends, family, business, the whole lot down here. So I suppose, and it's up the road in theory. Is it a direct flight, or do you fly via the Via? Where do you go?
The first 2 I did Dubai and Qatar, and now I've said no to that from now on. Now I'll only do London direct, or I'll maybe even, but like, I want to fly somewhere from the island, stop over, do some work, and then fly directly. So probably London will be the only option for me. But I get it. And Matt, I understand. Like I right now, in the short term, that wouldn't be our first vacation location, simply because we go back a lot, and because we've been there and there's a big world to see. But I don't feel any ambivalence to South Africa. Like there's still a lot of love, and again, I'm exactly like you. I'm highly, highly positive about it to people. I don't like, we didn't so much leave South Africa as move to a place. And I recognize that there's, it's easy to say that, it sounds like a cop out, but we weren't even planning on moving. And then we saw this place pop up and we're like, oh, this sounds really cool. And that's what happened. But I do think that, I just think that I've got to figure out who I am here for a while. And right now I am stuck as a South Peel, and I really do enjoy my time in South Africa, but right now I want to be settled.
It takes time, though. It takes time, like I think with this Colombian friend of mine, and he was saying, because he's been here now for like 23 years or something like that, and he said, it takes 5 years to feel like you're actually settled. Don't know, for him that's at least how long it took, Yeah. But you have to be patient with it, man. And also, given the fact that you do move and you are a speaker, you do travel to Singapore, then fucking Dubai, blah, blah, South Africa, it's just going to take a little bit longer,
Yeah.
But the direction is there. The direction is there.
Intention,
the intention, like it's one of the things we're potentially going to touch on, but it's like direction is more important than speed. And so I think we want, I find that for me at least, I'm very impatient. Like I want everything done now. I'm very achievement driven. A lot of my self-worth is attached to achieving stuff. And if I don't achieve stuff, I start like getting into my head, and then suddenly I'm spinning and I'm beating myself up, and there's negative self-talk and whatever. And so I've learned to appreciate, certainly from a values perspective, just go pushing in the right direction, like the 1% thing, even though you're not hitting those outcomes that you may be looking for, as long as you keep hitting that same direction or that same intention, eventually you'll get there. And if you have faith and trust in the fact that that will become an inevitability, then it takes all the pressure off yourself, you see, or at least you don't focus as much of your energy and your time or your mental bandwidth on something that you can't really fucking control. It just takes time,
But can I say, I quite like, I think that's something else you were saying there, but I like the direction without distraction equals speed. So you can't create speed. Like there's certain things you can, try your best and be productive and all those things and hope things land. But I think what happens is that direction thing is that we often lose direction because of distraction. We find, the shiny penny. So if you can figure out that you can pick a direction and then stick to that direction, with some time, you will actually compound speed. I think that's mostly true for me.
I love
the
that.
counter narrative there is knowing it's why I don't like purpose as a concept, personal purpose. A lot of people spend so much time working on what their perfect personal purpose is. But if your purpose is no longer relevant as a problem we're solving in the world, you can stick with your purpose all you want, and nobody's going to need you. So I'm very big on, we talk about the importance of moving towards as opposed to moving forwards. A lot of businesses, yes, we move forward, we've gone further, but you've got to be moving towards something. And I think it's actually easier for people to understand. I just think we need to be careful to recalibrate what we're moving towards every now and then, and to know under what parameters we would keep that destination, that victory condition, as still the North Star.
The question is that a business North Star and a personal North Star? I found that the business North Stars are far more pliable. You can change them and often have to, right? But the human who's driving that business, what you desire deeply, your purpose, right? Like your actual you, the human, that probably is not going to change. And whether the world likes that or not, it's actually material.
Yeah,
I think that's
joy, happiness, safety, freedom. That's what people actually desire.
Completely. It's always the same, except the same handful of 5 things. But what I'm saying is that actually underpinning where you're moving as a business. I think those things, those personal victory conditions, is actually what keeps you on hopefully the right path.
So then how do you calibrate that, Rich? What's your words of wisdom on calibrating what that destination should be?
I guess, okay, so the first thing is if we separate, because I do separate, like my needs as a human being. I want to be a good friend, I want to be a good parent, I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good son. Like those are the things I want to be. And I recognize that there was times in my life where I was shit at many of those, and where I am now, it feels like this is what I'm working on. But within business, I'm trying to be relevant. And for me, relevance is being appropriate to the matter at hand. So the calibration point is, what is the matter at hand? What is the problem we're solving at the moment? And is the current victory condition that I'm on, because that's trajectory, and is the trajectory I'm on aligning with the problem that people need to solve in my world, in my universe? If it's not, how can I course correct? What would then be the victory condition? What game am I now playing? And that's why I always use that term, because victory condition speaks to, Sinek speaks about infinite games. Actually, James Carr spoke about infinite games. Sinek's kind of popularized it recently. But yes, sure, whatever, fuck. It's so nebulous, the idea of an infinite game. Yes, absolutely. If you extrapolate, you look out your life as an infinite game. But what's more interesting is to understand that we're actually playing a constant set of finite games. And in fact, that's how humans think. Oh, I want to lose 10 kilograms, finite game. Oh, I want to save up to buy a new car, finite game. Oh, I want to win this big client, finite game. And so actually what's interesting for me is just to figure out what are the games that we want to play, and am I still enjoying the game, and is the game still relevant for what we want to do, and to map out new points on this game. And that's how I think we do
this conversation about calibrating like what you want in a finite game sort of scenario. So like my finite game right now is to add more clients, like figure out the sales systems, growth systems, all that stuff. But part of that game playing, I've figured out actually that because everything we do is AI now, that I don't think I'm actually that far away from having a business that does, $1 to $3 million a year, but has a very small team. And actually, I would be able to choose how much I'm actually involved in the business. I can actually see that being something that I can solve for probably early next year, where the business is doing like 100,000 a month, and I don't actually have to be in the business. You know what I mean? Unless it's like solving specific people stuff or whatever. And then just focusing on adding more accelerants into the engine, right? So just getting it to the number that I want, and then selling it, making sure the profitability is there and all that stuff. Anyway, so that's the game I'm playing. But then, as a consequence of that sort of thoughts experiment, I actually found myself going, "Well, what would I actually do?" Do you know, like if that North Star
if you achieve that,
if I've achieved that thing, like what would I actually do? Like, would I actually sell it? As an example, why would you sell a business that essentially, could be just giving you an incredible lifestyle? Obviously, I have different motivations. You guys know what I'm about. But I was like, fuck, what would I actually do? And it scared the shit out of me, man. I was like, what would I actually do? And it was I just felt this like sudden anxiety, like fucking hell, if I actually achieve this goal, this North Star, and I finish the game a winner, like what would I actually do?
You have to do nothing, Matt, because you will never face that, right? So how will I act if I win Olympic gold? The person who's thinking about that question isn't the same person who gets off the podium with the Olympic gold. So do you understand what I mean by that?
No. Double click.
Well, so Matt, the present tense Matt is never going to have to deal with the what will I do once future tense Matt has achieved X, because you're not, it's that cheesy line, nobody has ever walked in the same river, because it's not the same river and it's not the same person, and you're just not that person. So it's not worth almost thinking of that right now. What it's worth doing is to say, well, this is the game that I'm playing. What a fun thing. Just like, because we've never arrived anywhere in our lives and then been like, oh fuck, I feel completely ill-equipped to do this level. It's like that game. So you've leveled up and now you're a different person, and so now your lens and view in the world will be so fundamentally different that thinking about that only, I think, or at least for me, thinking about that, like, oh, what will I do once this is done, would only stop me doing what I need to do to win this particular game.
Got it.
And I think that unless you have a very specific, I know what I would do post there. So the example thing is that if you said, I want to open up a KTM coffee bar in the mountains, okay? If you said that's what I want to do, then I'm going, you're probably on the wrong path. Because you should be altruistically doing that now, right? Because if that's where you want to end up, and this is the way to get there, I'm going, just bypass all the heavy lifting you're doing now and go and do that. So it's actually healthier that you don't know. Because if you said to me, if I made the $1 billion, I'd go open up a coffee shop in the mountains. I'm going, okay, why do you need $1 billion to do that? Like, so it's this thing around, it's probably good that you don't know what lives beyond that piece. Otherwise, I think you're on the wrong path. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So I visualize like every day. And so I worked on super yachts. So these massive floating palaces. So my thing is to sell it or sell the business and then basically go on like a 7-day, 10-day tour on a super yacht with like my best mates, family, and that kind of shit. So that's the one thing I know I would do. But certainly from what would I be doing with my time after that? I wouldn't.
That's
I wouldn't know.
A really fun victory condition for me. And I often think it's a better victory condition than you start from that and you say, okay, so what does the cost of a 7-day trip on a super yacht for 5 days? So what is the absolute margin around this kind of thing? Okay, what is my time frame? So what is the game state? The game state is 4 rounds of 3 months or 4 rounds of a year. And at the end of 4 years, this is what it is. So what do I need to achieve in order to do that? And then, you just use that goal jumping to go back. And I think that's a really nice thing. That's what I did with the limo. So when I wanted to buy the limousine, I'd said to myself, okay, I need to make the limo is going to cost me $1 million. And I said, okay, I need to make R1 million more than the target that I currently have. So I had a certain target for Missing Link. I said, if I make $1 million more than that target, I can buy the limo. And then we made that, I think, within 4 months because I wanted it so badly. I just manifested that I've got to have this stretch limousine. I can't remember if both of you have been in it. Brent, you've been in it, hey? Yeah.
It was a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was and porno AF. But it was fun. And so the deciding, hey, I'm now a person who wants to buy a limousine. And I've given myself a game that I have to make R1 million more than I would normally want to make in order to buy this. That became something fun to play for. And so I played that game for a while. And I ended up thinking it would take me like a year because that was the time frame we did it. But I ended up winning the game in 4 months because I was playing the game.
Can I ask both of you separately the same question? So what is, I mean, Matt, you're talking about, building this particular business that can make $3-4 million without having to put any hours in potentially. And then what, right? It's like, I'm trying to work out what are you guys actually working towards at the moment? And don't give me the, I want to have fun on the journey kind of answer. Like, I'm curious to know, is there a number, a date, a retirement date, I want to buy the yacht? What is it?
I'll go first if you don't mind. Yeah. So like for me, it's financial freedom and securing the financial well-being of my 2 kids.
How much is financial freedom?
For me, $10 million after tax. So, because you basically then you have enough to it can basically do a lot of different shit. And you
could come back to Franschhoek and live like an absolute king, you know that, eh?
Yeah, exactly. But you could also drop $100,000 on a 7-day super yacht charter and not worry about it. But it's interesting. I guess I have a different, to your point earlier, Rich, around this present tense maths and future tense maths. And when I first got here, I was looking to basically sell equities or private securities to high growth companies and investors and whatever. So I started studying my series, I think it's series 82 exam. And basically you have to know how the financial system works here in the US. Like what are bonds, what are REITs, all these different things, how does, stock options trading work and fucking futures and all this rubbish and different pension funds and who owns what, where. And I was like, and I didn't finish it because it was literally killing myself. It's killing my life. Like I was going into depression, learning about financial instruments and stuff. But what it certainly left me with was a very real perspective on how much money you actually need to make in order to reinvest it into these instruments that can basically just generate more cash for you. Like it's kind of like you have to have cash to make more money. And so when I was younger, I was always like, oh yeah, you got to be like a billionaire, whatever. But actually you don't. Like if you have a certain amount of money, or even just a certain amount of cash flow, like it's another option. You don't have to sell it. Like if you're making like 80 grand profit a month and you invest that shit, you can make $10 million in 10 years. And also recognize that that I'm only 45. Like I appreciate how young I am. Like I have so much time. I was listening to a podcast with Ray Kurzweil. He's been in AI for like 60, 70 years. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says, and with this AI story, like he was asked the question by Joe Rogan, he was like, so what happens, or what year do you predict? Because he's predicted a few things pretty accurately over the years. But he said that by the year 2049, the advances in AI medical technology will basically mean that in 2049, whatever your age is, as long as you're healthy and you've been, paying attention to yourself and whatever, and you're alive, that you can choose to probably live forever. Because he's basically talking about exponential technology and how we don't understand, and it's very hard for the human mind to understand exactly what the impact of this technology will be. But anyway, if he is right, Frank will be 32. Imagine that. And I will be like, I'll be like 65, 64, somewhere around there. Yeah, 64. And so imagine having that choice, right? And so putting that aside, even if that didn't happen, I'm 64 years old. Like I'm still going to be young enough, fit enough, hungry enough to continue on this journey, right? To have that victory condition secured for me. And it's a very powerful thing for me personally, because when I was younger, I always felt like I didn't have enough time. I had to know what my purpose was. I had to, build this business faster and whatever. And I was very ambitious, and I paid a very high price over the years. So I'm looking at my whole life and the journey around like, what's the North Star? Why am I doing it? And how much time do I actually have, given how much the world is changing, given the reality of my life, and it's just given me a newfound like appreciation for the journey or the struggle, and just recognizing that it's inevitable for me. I will get there. I will win that game eventually.
Good. Rich?
If I separate financials out of it, let's just, let's pretend that you win the lottery along the way. And for some people that wouldn't be enough, but let's pretend I've won the lottery, and so finances and paying bills isn't a thing. It would be to be speaking on really big, really significant stages with really big, really significant thinkers.
Okay.
As a peer. And I think I would grow to the level of the thinker that is there. And I think I would hold my own.
I kind of feel like if I think about you, Rich, like you that guy for me already. You know what I mean? That's what when you talk about that, I'm like, well, you're already there. You that guy.
But I'm not. Thank you. But I'm not there. Like I'm not being invited to speak. At Ray Kurzweil's holding a summit, and they want some different thinkers to be there. I'm not being invited onto Modern Wisdom or Tim Ferriss or fucking Joe Rogan. So, and in fact, not one of them. I'm 2 to 3 degrees of separation away from them wanting to do that, which that's going to be a bit of a failure for me. That's going to be a point of, well, fuck, I think you had the potential and you wasted it if I don't figure that out. So that's a bit of a stress for me. Like that does feel like I've got to get into the slipstream in which they are acting. To be, remember we did an episode of Hold My Beer, maybe the first or the second one, where I spoke to you about being first name famous. Do you remember that? If I turn around and say, Tim had on his show this person, you'd probably get to that I was talking about Ferris. if I said to you, you know, Seth wrote this new book and blah, 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 it might be Godin. And, you know, potentially. And I'd like to get to the point of that if somebody turned around and said, you know, it's funny because you always hear these podcasters, they name drop, right? So, and it's very funny. And the easiest name drop to do for anyone is to say somebody with your first name. I was chatting to a quite famous South African speaker the other day, and what did he? Oh, fuck, man. He basically did that. He turned around and said, you know, I was chatting to, fuck, I'm trying to even remember who it was. It was somebody so big. But like, it was like, I was chatting to Tim the other day, or I was chatting to Gary. And, you know, like when he said to me, and obviously Gary, we weren't having any contextual discussion. And I said, oh, which Gary? He said, oh, obviously Vaynerchuk. And I was like, that's not obvious. That was like the silliest flex I've ever seen in my life. But I want to get to the point where somebody could be having in the right circles to say, have you had Rich in your show yet? Oh, yeah. Now, obviously, there's Rich, Roll, Rich, whatever, and things like that. And I get it's a very generic name. And that will never happen. But it's that kind of idea that within a context, somebody might mention my name and other people would at least know it. And even if that was, oh, we had Rich Mulholland on, instead of saying, who's he? They would say, oh, no, but I know a friend of a friend or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah.
So if I can, I have to remind myself, fuck your pride, fuck your pride. I feel so egotistical saying those words out loud that I feel embarrassed.
And
but Rich, you're one of the only people, I think you're probably the only person I know that has the capability or the ability to do that in my ecosystem. And I've met a lot of people, right? Like I've known a lot of people, but I say that in terms of what your aspiration is, your journey, your experience, your ethos, your brain, all of that. And I'm not trying to fuck your pride. I'm not trying to like pump that up. But honestly, I think you're probably one of the only guys I know that will go like, if that happened, I wouldn't be like, didn't see that coming. Like I say that honestly.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think it's in your future. Yeah, cool.
We've got to get yours now because you've heard Matt and I's.
So
you know why I like this? As a Middle Ageless Men, this is a nice point of departure because we're kind of kicking off the show, creating victory conditions for each of us. And it's actually quite sorry, because I realized I asked you a question and cut you off, but it's a really nice point of departure for the show is that we're middle-aged, but we're ageless in that we're not ending. We're on our way up to something and all three of us are playing a game. And all three of us are kind of setting this victory condition for what that game is in this inaugural episode of it, this version of the show. And I think it's quite an interesting point of calibration that we hold ourselves accountable to these going forward. So what's yours?
So mine is actually quite simple, is that I am not dissimilar to you, Rich, or I don't know, Matt, I didn't know you that young. I knew Rich when he was young, much younger. But I think that I tend to think that I worked especially hard for an especially long period of time compared to most people I know. And hard meaning the kind of work and the kind of crap I dealt with and put up with from my sort of late teens up to my mid-30s. And that pace never really stopped. It just, I got out of the one business unsuccessfully and then rolled into the next one and just maintained pace. But I've always punished myself and sort of, I live by this thing that I work like a dog. Okay? Now, I say that now, I think I work hard. I don't work anywhere near as hard as I know I could, like in terms of the hours or compared to I used to. But I still feel like I work too hard. And what I'm doing now, Rich, I love the sort of short-term game towards the long-term sort of victory condition, is that I have a couple of financial things that I want to do very quickly, like, certain objectives that I want to achieve. And I built, this is probably the 5th version of my 5-year plan, but I've got sort of 3 years left of this plan and actually currently trying to bring that closer. Like it's working for me. And my victory condition, honestly, is to get to a point where at that point in time, I know that financially I'm at a particular comfort zone. At that point, I want to be able to work, and I will continue to work, but I only want to work 2 or 3 hours a day. And then I want that option, because I don't feel like I've ever had that option in my life. It's always felt like there's this machine behind me that forced me to work, or it's my own drive that's forcing me to work, or it's the fact that I lost so much money out of my last business that I have this desire to recoup assets that I've sort of lost in that business. But my current condition is a couple of short-term financial things, like, pay off the house, hit certain numbers overseas, whatever those things are. And then at the age of about 52, which is sort of 2.5, 3 years away, I want to get to a point where I can go, these are the 20 clients I want, only these 20 clients, and I'll do one client a day. And I want to be able to have the choice of just getting up later, going for a run, getting on my bike, picking up the kids, whatever those things are. Because I feel like I've never really given myself that option. Because of the
that's
desire
a nice, clear,
hit
easy to measure
numbers.
20 client month. I want to have a 20 client month. Yeah, that's really interesting. And that could either be because you're so wealthy that you could work with 20, people at the current rate, and that's enough because you're just doing it like Will Foster does. Or it could be, I don't have enough, but I'm working with 20 people and they're paying me $10,000, dollars a month.
Well,
and
the idea, that's the idea. The idea is that I can get to a point where those 20 clients are more than covering the daily costs in my life. And as you say, we spoke about last time, was that, and I'll keep reminding my wife, I've got 20 years of education ahead of me still. And that shit's not cheap, and it's not going to get cheaper. So
that 20 client month is a really nice, yardstick, right? Yeah, one a day, a client a day. Monthly. Yeah, very cool.
I had a similar feeling this week where I also don't want to work hard anymore, and I think I've come to that sort of realization because I'm focused so much on systems and automation and how do I save time and have other people do all, like if I do anything twice, I'm looking to automate it. So I'm looking to do automated with Asana, or if I can anything, as long as I don't have to do it again. And so I hate working hard, dude. If I have to, I love selling, right? But then the delivery piece and then having to manage the fucking process after that, I hate that shit. It ruins my mood and my day and whatever. But yeah, I agree with you. If you can design whatever you're trying to do in such a way that you can choose, right, where to put your time, then I think that's that for me is the definition of success in sort of business, entrepreneurship, growing a business, whatever.
And I think Rich and I had this conversation. Sorry, a few months or a couple of years ago, was the older I get, the smaller the number becomes. Weirdly enough, you say when you're 20, had to be whatever the number is. It's now actually less and less as I get older. Sorry,
yeah, well, I realize, I look at my parents. They don't require. They live an incredible life, and they I don't think they've ever been at the point of wealth that I'm at. But your requirements are actually relatively small, right? And they just live the right life. And as long as you're willing to settle for the life that you can afford, you're in good shape. The problem is that when you're climbing up the mountain, the life that you can afford is you want the life that's higher up the hill. But I'm at the point of my life in which I'm climbing down the mountain. So remind me to chat to you again. I've got this theory about 3 lives now. I used to think we live 2 lives. The life before you realize you're dying, the life after you realize you're dying. Briefly, the 3rd life is when you're standing on the precipice. You've gone to a point and now you're just looking at death and you're wondering when it will happen. And I think that's what I'm currently petrified about getting to. But we'll get to that in a bit, or in a future episode. But I think that's a big thing, is that your view changes on what you need. And that's why financial goals are tricky to be as victory conditions. When we work with corporates, we always say to them, the financial goal is not a victory condition. That's an if this, then that. If I achieve X, then we will make that. And the reason that's important is because it's not about the money till you know what it's about. And then it's about the money. Yeah. Anyway, boys, we've done good.
Look, all I want to say was that piece about standing on the precipice and facing death, that left me with cold shivers. I don't know what that's about, but I'm scared to go there. And I'll definitely wear the black shirt next time, because I don't want to get shat out again.
The basic thought is that, there's a point where, and I'll tell you very quickly because I want you to ponder it and then we'll discuss it.
Yes.
So when you're 20, you don't actually stop and consider, one day I'll die. Just everything is up and we're climbing up the mountain. And then there was a day when I woke up and I realized, holy shit, I'm going to die. And I think one of the biggest gifts we give people, we give our kids, is we don't remind them of this. Like, we don't tell them about Memori Morty, at that point of their life, because, like, fuck it, let them enjoy it. Let them go up there and it's amazing. But then you realize this, and of course you become stoic about it and you try and reflect on it, but actually it's quite scary. Death is quite a scary thing. But then I look at where my dad is, and I see my dad. Anytime you mention death around my dad will be very upset about it. He's like, so can you just, why are we bloody talking about this again, Maria? What's going on? Can we stop, please? Why does this always come up? And he gets very defensive. And I realized that my dad must live in a different world. So my dad lives in a world where he's not walking down the hill. My dad is he's 76 years old, and he's standing on the precipice. In fact, it's his birthday in 3 days, 77. And he's standing on the precipice, and he's staring, and he's wondering, I think, every day when he wakes up, like, or goes to bed, like, is this the day? And he's not telling me that as a gift to me, because it must be so fucking scary. And he's trying to deal with it as best as he can. And so I'm reading this book now called The 5 Invitations. It's by a Buddhist Zen hospice guy. And I'm trying to prepare myself for the precipice before I get there. So I want to be ready at the time that I want to do the work, because I think my dad didn't. I think my dad is standing at the precipice. Now he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do there. And I don't want to do that. I want to be figuring that out now. So right now I'm struggling with some existential shit, but I'm doing that so that future me can stand on the cliff with a sense of solace and understanding, is the point.
Interesting.
We should definitely make that the next episode.
Yeah, a talk on death is actually a worthwhile topic, because I think we don't talk about it
Completely.
Yeah, it's not a dinner
Guys,
table talk.
always a pleasure.
Yeah. So,
All right,
right,
guys.
boys.
Take it easy, man.
Hold on.
Ciao, ciao.
See you soon.
Bye.